Okay. Good morning, everybody. I am New York State Senator Jessica Scarcella-Spanton, and we are here today to talk about congestion pricing and how we want to continue the pause and stop it altogether. I proudly joined a bipartisan lawsuit with Borough President Vito Fossella, the UFT, the colleagues you see here behind me, to stop congestion pricing from starting. I rallied against it and was vocal not only about the financial implication, but the environmental detriment to my district as well, which you can read in the MTA's own environmental impact study. Staten Island already has high asthma rates, high cancer rates, and this plan shows that every pollutant will increase and our air quality will get worse if this is implemented. Governor Hochul did the right thing by stopping congestion pricing because despite backlash, 66% of New Yorkers knew it was the right move. Think of the people driving to work in hopes that they can get home quicker to see their families, or the truckers who will be burdened by astronomical costs to do their job, or people visiting loved ones in the hospital within the central business district. As people struggle to pay their rent, cover their grocery bills, and for my constituents who have some of the longest and most expensive commutes in the country, congestion pricing is just another tax. Governor, I urge you to not lift the pause on congestion pricing and to let this program lapse. Our constituents deserve it. And I think it's important to note, too, we saw what just happened across the entire country. This is not what people want. This is the worst of politics, and it's something that I do not support, and I will do everything within my power to stop. I'm joined here by so many of my colleagues who I'll be bringing up, and we have a bipartisan group standing right here behind us. They are from Staten Island, from Brooklyn. I have a colleague from Queens who wasn't able to join us. We have Assemblywoman Jamie Williams. We have Congressman Mike Lawler. We have so many people who came from all parts of the state and city to say no to congestion pricing. And with that, first I will bring up our Borough President, Vito Fossella.
Thank you very much, Senator Scarcella-Spanton. Thank you for bringing us together here. We're elected officials, but we're here to be a voice for the people who feel that they don't have a voice. And talk about tone deaf. As the Senator mentioned, last week, the people of this country and around here said enough. And if you want to see Exhibit A of cynicism and exploiting the political process, resurrecting congestion pricing is just that. A number of months ago, as the Senator mentioned, we sued in federal court to stop congestion pricing because it is a burden on the people of this borough of Staten Island and this region. The government's own study demonstrated that air pollution would get worse on Staten Island, traffic would get worse on Staten Island, and we would have to pay a third toll. They're intentionally harming people with congestion pricing. They're intentionally hurting people with congestion pricing. This is wrong. I really want to commend the Senator for bringing us all together here today. There's going to be a lot of speakers, so I won't speak too much. President Trump has indicated that congestion pricing will be terminated. A good friend of ours, Lee Zeldin, was just nominated to become head of the EPA. He's on record opposing congestion pricing. This whole process is a scam. They try to fool people, run through Election Day, and then bring it back. I hope the good people of this city and this state and this region shut it down once and for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to bring up our Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica, for your leadership on the state level, and I'm proud to stand here with my colleagues in a bipartisan way to tell the governor there is no way we will allow you to move forward with congestion pricing without a fight, and we will fight you tooth and nail until congestion pricing is dead for good. I can tell you that this is much more opposition than just the people standing here today. I have elected officials, Democrats, Republicans, at all levels of government that reach out saying They don't want congestion pricing, and they will stand with us in this fight. The governor should learn, look at the will of the people, listen to the will of the people. They have made it very clear that they do not want this tax cash grab. That's exactly what it is. They've admitted it such over the last few months, and this is not the way to responsibly govern, by hitting commuters over the head with another fee. We have a large budget in the state. Federal government would be happy to match commitments made by the state toward transit, and we urge the governor to look within her own budget and prioritize spending so it actually goes toward the things that people deserve and want, and that includes transit. I'm happy to, again, stand with my colleagues, and as was said, I've personally spoken with President Trump about the congestion tax. He is opposed. He sees that it's detrimental to our city's economy and that it will hurt hard-working New Yorkers, and I believe as long as we can continue to extend this until after January 20th, that it will be dead upon arrival. And my colleague Mike Lawler and I are looking for every single angle, legislatively and legally, from the federal perspective, to see how we can stop this before or after it potentially takes effect. And with that said, I want to thank my good colleague Mike Lawler for coming from the Hudson Valley. He's been a great partner in this fight, and he's also a member of our newly formed, which was formed last year, the Anti-Congestion Tax Caucus in Washington, which includes also our friend Gottheimer, who's a Democrat from New Jersey, and other members from the region. Mike Lawler.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here on Staten Island, and obviously you see before you a broad bipartisan coalition of elected officials at the federal, state, and city level in strong opposition to this scam. Congestion pricing is nothing more than a scam. It is about raising $1 billion so that the MTA could borrow $15 billion for its bloated and mismanaged operations, and it needs to be stopped dead in its tracks. As a member of the State Assembly, I introduced legislation to repeal congestion pricing. In Congress, along with Josh Gottheimer and Nicole Malliotakis, we've introduced legislation to block it. Governor Hochul put in effect a temporary pause. And at the time, while I commended it, I said, watch what happens after Election Day. Well, here we are, and Governor Hochul is talking about lifting the pause. Why? Because the MTA needs the money. This is the same agency that has pissed away billions of dollars over decades of mismanagement. The congestion pricing scam will cost the average commuter from Rockland County or Westchester or the outer boroughs $5,000 a year more if they work in the zone. $5,000 a year more on top of the tolls they already pay, on top of the high gasoline prices that they incur. It's outrageous. People cannot afford to live in New York, and it's crap like this that is driving them out of this state. We have to stop this dead in its tracks. As Congresswoman Malliotakis said, I too have spoken with President Trump about this. He is adamantly opposed. We are going to do everything we can from a federal level to stop this scam. At the end of the day, the MTA loses $700 million a year. $700 million a year from people who jump the turnstiles and refuse to pay their fare to ride the MTA. And yet hardworking commuters who are forced to drive because they don't have adequate mass transit options are going to be taxed an additional $5,000 a year to pay for the MTA's operations. Bullshit. We're not doing it. So it is going to stop, and it's going to stop now. And Governor Hochul can hear loud and clear from all of us in a bipartisan way that this is not moving forward. And if she tries to move forward, we will kill it at the federal level. We will take it to court, as these folks already have, and we will stop it dead in its tracks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Next, I'll be moving over to our state colleague, so that's the order I'm going in, and I would love to bring up my friend, Senator Andrew Lanza.
Good morning, everyone. First, let me express my gratitude to Senator Scarcella-Spanton for making this all happen this morning, and to all my colleagues, really. And what you see here, I think, I think it shows what is wrong with government, especially here in New York, and why people are so frustrated and so fed up with what's happening because of the arrogance, truly, that they see in their government. I think it speaks to what happened in the presidential election a week or so ago. People are tired of being told that they don't know what's happening. People are tired of being told that they're garbage. People are told to sit down, shut up, and just take whatever arrogant folks like Chairman Lieber say they have to do. The only constant in this congestion pricing tax scheme is the level of dishonesty that has been there from its inception. Even the title is a lie. Remember, this all started because it was to address congestion in Manhattan. And then we find out that they're counting on billions of dollars in revenue, so you can't have both. If you're going to take billions of dollars in revenue, it means you still have the congestion by definition. Then they said it was about pollution. And then we find, I think as a result of the colleagues behind me, especially Congressman Fasella, we find out that it will result in more pollution, more carbon, more disease, and more congestion in other places like the place we're standing in right now. The dishonesty is plain to see. Politicians love to hide behind these authorities, the MTA, the Port Authority, and say, not my job. I've got no say in all this. Remember, Governor Hochul famously, I think it was on a Monday, said, well, I don't control the MTA. There's nothing I can do about it. And then a few days later, less than 3, by the way, there was a famous meeting. Some prominent Democrats at the national level met with her and said, hey, this is going to hurt our chances in the November election with respect to congressional seats. And mysteriously, Governor Hochul had all the power in the world when it came to the MTA. And we had the pause. The big lie, among all the other lies, the big lie. People see through it and they're fed up. And imagine this. Imagine this. You have elected officials that say, if we don't have congestion pricing, the world's going to come to an end. The oceans are going to boil. Traffic is going to come to a dead stop. We need this for the good of all of us. And then one day someone decides, well, elections are more important than saving the world. It's dishonest. It's disgusting, and people are fed up. They're fed up. And I think what you see here is emblematic of the very thing that is wrong in our representative democracy. You have Democrats and Republicans, every single elected official representing the more than 500,000 people on Staten Island standing here telling you we don't want this. You have an overwhelming majority of the people of New York City and beyond saying we don't want this. And in spite of all that, arrogant Lieber, the biggest liar of them all, says tough luck, take it, shut up. Governor Hochul says, sorry, can't do anything about it. But she seems to be wavering, and we hope she continues to waver here. And we hope she sees through to understand that the people's voice matters, and she needs to hear it. This past session, or we're still in session, there's a vehicle, the Republicans are in the minority, as you know. We can't bring bills to the floor, but there's a mechanism, hostile amendment. I put a bill on the floor that would repeal congestion pricing. Every Republican voted for it. Every Democrat voted against it, except one, my friend and colleague, the courageous Senator Scarcella-Spanton. But I will tell you this, and this is what is important. I had colleagues from her party, my friends across the aisle, came to me and said, hey, listen, if the majority puts this on the floor, we will vote for it. So there's the solution, folks, among some others that we've heard and will hear about. If a repeal of congestion pricing comes to the floor of the New York Senate, I'll guarantee every Republican votes for it, and my colleague, Justice Scarcella-Spanton, Senator Scarcella-Spanton, I know will deliver enough votes to make it happen. If it comes to the Assembly, talking to my colleagues in the Assembly, Republicans, it'll pass. And I dare Governor Hochul to veto it. So there's the easy solution. This came about by passage of law. We can get rid of it by the passage of the new law. And we've got to listen to the people, and it's got to start here. And I pray that once and for all, I think we need to look back to this election. People see through the bullshit. Let's start listening to the people.
Thank you, Senator Lanza. Next, I'd like to bring up Assemblymember Michael Riley. Every corner of Staten Island today.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you to all my colleagues. From every shore on Staten Island to Brooklyn to upstate, or what we consider upstate, right? We heard already the MTA is mismanaged. This is just another tax, as it's been said. But you know what Staten Islanders are really sick and tired of? The tolls from the Verrazano Bridge paying for every other portion of the MTA because they're bleeding money. So what are they doing? They're hitting the 500,000 people on Staten Island with even more taxes. You know, a few years back, and I'm going to read you all some numbers. This is an example of the mismanagement. Since 2013, when the new taxes were passed in the state budget, they've collected money strictly for the MTA. Where is it? What are you doing with it, Mr. Jano? What are you doing with it? $25 a year for vehicle registrations. 0.375% additional sales tax on everything you purchase in the MTCD. 0.25% tax on all cell phone calls within the area. A New York State gas tax, 8 cents per gallon. 50-cent tax on all taxi rides, including Uber. Mortgage recording basic tax of 50 cents on every $100, plus an additional 25 cents on every 100. 30 cents on every 100 in the MTCD. Car rental tax, 6%. In the MTCD, which Staten Island and 5 boroughs are included in, it's 11%. Talk about getting hit over the head. That's what New Yorkers are getting. We're getting hit over the head by our so-called leaders. Well, we're standing here to tell you it's enough. It's time that we hit you over the head. And we tell you once and for all, look at the numbers, look at the stats. We all came out against it. That pause that you put on it, Governor, we all knew it was a bait and switch. I was cautiously optimistic, but unfortunately I know politics. And that's what that was, strictly politics. Now it's time for you to rise up and really make the hard decision to tell Jano that he mismanages the MTA, and it's done now. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to bring up my colleague, Assemblymember Michael Tannousis.
Thank you to Senator Scarcella-Spanton for holding this press conference today. Only in the state of New York will you have the governor partner up with New York City's 6th crime family, also known as the MTA, to try to push forth a plan that was nothing more than a tax, even though their own environmental impact study showed that there would be a detrimental effect in regards to pollution in Staten Island, Brooklyn, the Bronx, and all the outer areas. And then, when the pressure got too much, when they realized that politics got in the way and that they may actually lose some elections, they decided to put a pause on it until what they thought was going to be the next president of the United States, Kamala Harris, would take over the White House, and then they would push it through. President Trump was victorious. He was victorious because he got the votes of the people of Staten Island and a good amount of the people of the rest of New York State. And now what do? Now they're trying to jam it through potentially before January 20th. Only in New York State do you have this type of actions taking place to a government that is tone deaf to its citizens. It is disgraceful. And I call on the Trump administration to take every step necessary to investigate the MTA and finally hold them accountable. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to bring up my colleague, Assemblymember Sam Pirozzolo.
Good morning, everyone. How are you today? So I think this, and I'd like to thank you, Senator, for doing this, and my colleagues from all across the state, both sides of the aisle. Good morning for coming here. So this press conference can really be boiled down to 2 words. Trump won. And the reason I say that is because, as reported by most of the major media, if not all, the reason that Kathy Hochul wants to reinitiate this congestion, well, actually it's a lawfare tax is really what it is. It's lawfare tax. The reason she wants to initiate it is because she wants to do it before President Trump gets into the White House. She's not talking about congestion anymore. She's not talking about pollution. She's not talking about money. She's talking about legal lawfare of getting this accomplished before the next president sits down and takes a seat in the Oval Office. That's wrong. So, Governor, if you want to consider saving on pollution, decreasing pollution, and increasing money, how about you take away the gas-guzzling vehicle of Janno Lieber? That man makes more money than the President of the United States. How is that possible? Why don't you require every single member of the MTA to use public transportation to get to their meetings? And when you do that, you're going to say, well, gee, it's just not convenient for them to go from Queens to Staten Island. Well, guess what? It's not convenient for us either, and that's what we're trying to tell you here today. It's crap. In addition, as I said, the lawfare has to stop. Everybody needs to pay their fair share. This illegal toll lawfare against Staten Island and the rest of New York City, you want to talk about inequity and equality? Where is the equity for the people of Staten Island? Where is the equity for the people of the Bronx, from Brooklyn? There is no equity. Where is the independent federal audit of the MTA to see how Janno Lieber is spending our money? You know, it would be one thing if you came to us and you said, listen, this is how we're spending our money. We have a budget problem here, and we think we want to do something different. That's not what you're saying here. What you're saying here is we are going to pound New Yorkers into the ground and force them to use a public transportation system that is not equitable, it does not work, it is not safe, and it doesn't help everyone equally across the state and the city. It's crap and it's garbage. So, Governor, I'm calling on you today to continue your indefinite pause, because Lord knows you did it once, you can do it twice. And you did it to save elections and to save seats in the state. You got city seats coming up. Lord knows we can use with a few less Democratic socialists. So if you want to go ahead with this, go ahead. Bring it on. We're going to make a good election out of it. This needs to stop. Thank you.
Sam, always very lively. And next, I would like to bring up, again, this is a bipartisan issue. This is an issue that impacts the entire state, but specifically right here in New York City. My colleague, Assemblymember Jamie Williams from right over the bridge. Come on over.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much again, Senator, for having us this morning. And I want you to take a very good look at what leadership is going to look like in the future. Behind us, bipartisan leadership, everyone working together, putting aside differences. This is our new future. And a very, very direct message to Governor Hochul. When congestion pricing came out back then, I voted against it. It was bad then, and it's still bad today. And just before we left session in June, there was a pause on this congestion pricing. So what changed? I couldn't agree more with my colleague, Michael Riley, saying that it's definitely, and so common sense, a bait and switch. But I'm here to tell you that as a bipartisan group, we will continue to fight this fight. But because it's not just Staten Island, because South Brooklyn, where I represent, is also a transit desert. And you are putting forth something that is a money grab that will keep hitting the pockets of our residents here. So enough is enough, and enough with the rhetoric. Today is a new day. The people have spoken, and I assure you they will speak again. Thank you.
Next, I would like to bring up my other colleague in Brooklyn, Assemblymember Michael Novakov.
Maybe you could
Thank you so much to Senator Scarcella-Spenton, and thank you so much to each and every of my colleagues who are protecting our right to go to any borough, unfortunately, except the Staten Island, because you have to pay the toll for the bridge anyway, to go to Manhattan not being charged anything. I think it's extremely important. And it reminds me everything and most of the project that city does. For example, take the bike lanes. In my Shipshead Bay area, 2 lanes of traffic was closed in order to build a bike lane, which is used maybe by 1 bike an hour. And the fire truck cannot make it through 1 lane because it's too narrow. We see these examples, or take, for instance, the food, the school, the food in the school that kids hate, the spoiled milk and apples. And they're saying that the food is great. This is the same situation where the government is not listening to the people, simply not listening to the people. And I just want to remind our government that such experiments in Europe didn't work well. It didn't stop the congestion. It has nothing to do with the congestion. This is just another tax, and we have enough of taxation in the city and in the state. It's nothing to do with the congestion. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to bring up my other very vocal colleague, Councilmember Joe Burelli.
Finally.
Thank you, Senator.
To the city now.
We're also happy to see you back for us for another term.
Thank you.
It's so apropos the MTA gave us a bronze historical map here because I want to talk to you about history. Before the MTA, there was a spur of the Staten Island Railroad that used to service this community, South Beach, Midland Beach. On the North Shore, there was a rail line that used to serve people who actually lived there. Before the MTA, there were ferries to Brooklyn.
Before the MTA, there were ferries to other parts of the city in New Jersey. At one point, we even tried to dig a tunnel. Now it's called the Narrows, but it was just too wide for the MTA to complete it. We have 4 bus depots. Soon we'll have 3. We used to have 32,000 people who ride express buses. Now we have 22. In all these things, the MTA has failed us. In all these things, the MTA has failed to deliver results for the people of Staten Island. But alas, they gave us one thing. They gave us a giant bridge. 12 lanes. Biggest son of a bitch bridge in the city. And they said, this is how you're going to get to Manhattan. This is our gift to you. And it was 50 cents, and then it was $1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. And once they realized they could pay for the other trains and buses and ferries and things around the city, they made it 6 and 7 and 8 and 9, and now it's $20. And again, the commonality in all this is that the MTA failed to deliver public transit, but will now charge us for the privilege of relying on the only means of transportation they've given us. This is why Staten Islanders are so mad. This is why Staten Islanders view John Lieber as an absolute failure. His job, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, is to provide transportation. He has failed. His predecessors has failed. And now the agency says, well, we can't do anything without more money, and guess who has to pay it? The people who we failed, the people who have to drive, whether they're from Staten Island or Brooklyn or the Hudson Valley or in New Jersey or wherever in between. That is the fundamental injustice of congestion pricing. Now, Kathy Hochul, known for her political acumen, has made a very sharp analysis. It is poor politics to charge people for government's failure. She's right. She's right. Well, I'll remind her that there's an election in 2 years. And she's going to want those same people who weren't mad at her party in this election cycle to not be mad at her again. Again, I mean, I could probably charge a consulting fee to her campaign for this advice. But it's still fundamentally true. It's unpopular now. It will be unpopular then. Governor Hochul, please take John Lieber and tell him to go fly a kite somewhere, get rid of him, and replace the MTA brass with people who actually want to address public transit and do it in a way that saves the taxpayer money and makes government efficient. Thank you.
I encourage the press after this to ask Joe Burelli why he calls him John Lieber, because it's a good answer, but that's for later. Thank you so much for that, Council Member. Next, I would like to bring up my colleague, Council Member David Carr.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Senator Scarcella-Spanton, for bringing us all together. This is a critical moment in the congestion pricing debate. And let's be very clear, as my colleagues have all said, congestion pricing is and would be, if implemented, a public policy disaster. It will do none of the good things it claims it will do, and it will absolutely do the terrible things that we're all warning would take place. We've talked about it before. The environmental assessment that the MTA did says there will be negative environmental impacts across the city and the region, in particular here in Staten Island. And they didn't even do the full environmental impact study they should have done as required by federal law. So we can safely say it's just the tip of the iceberg. And because they didn't do that study, that's why I'm supremely confident in all the lawsuits that have been filed against it, because it cannot stand up in court on that basis. And I thank the borough president and the UFT and all my colleagues for being a part of these litigation efforts, because they're going to be successful. And the truth is, it's also contributing to the affordability crisis. It's going to dip its hands into the pockets of our commuters, and it's also going to hurt the people in Manhattan who are now going to have the costs that are going to be imposed by trucking pass on to them in stores, as if inflation wasn't high enough, as if Manhattan wasn't already unaffordable enough. That's why we rallied with bipartisan cooperation in Manhattan with Democrat district leaders against this. They know what's going to happen to them in their borough. And the so-called transit or transportation promises that all of this money is supposedly going to solve, well, that would require that the entity receiving it be actually competent fiscal stewards of the money that they receive. They don't exactly have a track record of that. Colleagues were talking about it before. Senator Riley talked about all the taxes and fees they get. Then you add on top of that the constant and recurring increases to tolls and fares in our city, the additional subsidies that the state legislature and the city council have given to the MTA over the years. Every time they've asked for more and said this is going to help us get through a rough spot, they come back again and ask for more a second time, a third time, a fourth time. It will never end because they are not competent to act as the transportation authority that they are supposed to be. The transit that they say will come, the capital program that they believe will be financed, I don't believe that it's going to be financed. I don't believe it's going to come. And that we're just going to be looking down the barrel again in a few years to another ask, and it's just going to be, oh, one more time. They're not ending congestion. They're profiting from it. That's what this program will do. And that's why we're all here opposing it. Thank you.
And last, I would like to bring up my colleague from the North Shore, Councilwoman Camila Hanks, because we overlap, come up here, we overlap tremendously in my district. And every single particular pollutant listed in that environmental impact study gets worse, especially in Port Richmond. So
100%. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate that. It's a wonderful bookend being a Democrat and being part of this bipartisan effort here. Good morning, I'm Camila Hanks, and once again, I stand with my colleagues in strong opposition to MTA's deeply flawed congestion pricing plan. From the start, we have been united from both sides of the aisles, working together for the people of our respective districts. We have been clear. This proposal placed an unfair and unnecessary burden on Staten Islanders who already face, as we've heard today, long commutes, limited transit options, and worsening air quality. Staten Islanders are asked to be paying more without seeing any improvements to our daily commute or our quality of life. MTA has failed our community, demonstrating a lack of innovation to address fare evasion, offering no effort to develop new marketing revenue streams. The MTA must learn that there is no more you can squeeze from Staten Island and Staten Islanders. Congestion pricing adds yet another burden, deepening environmental injustices in working-class neighborhoods, while Manhattan's wealthiest zip codes benefit from cleaner air. We want and deserve cleaner air, too. We've had enough of this borough discrimination, and it is hitting the hard-working pockets of the people my colleagues and I have the privilege to represent. Staten Islanders will not be responsible for the MTA's fiscal mismanagement, and we will not be forced to shoulder additional costs for their failures. Staten Islanders deserve fair treatment, real solutions, no more taxes, no more tolls. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, I want to close this out by mentioning we have people from every corner of New York City, from upstate, I'm sorry, I have to agree, here saying that congestion pricing needs to end. Thank you to the governor for putting a pause on it. Continue to do the right thing that 66% of New Yorkers stand behind, or else you're going to lose a lot of us. With that, I will take questions. Yes.